All right. So what I was gonna say is chapter one, chapter four, you're gonna start building in synthesis again.
Okay.
Um, and so basically, here it's just, and I'll talk you through this real quick. You got enough time? Five, ten
Yes.
minutes?
Yes. Yes.
So begin with a brief overview of the purpose of the study. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for that. And then after you get done with that, don't forget this part. Organization of the chapter. That should just be basically these headers. Look at the things, the headers for the chapter.
Yes.
This is gonna, for your study, since it's qualitative, it's gonna say trustworthiness.
Yes. Okay.
I don't know, you've started this already.
Oh, yes, sir.
Trustworthiness of the data, results,
Yes.
research questions, evaluation of findings. So you basically, that's the organization of the chapter. And
Okay.
then it just has basically a note. Hey, you're going to be organizing the entire chapter around the research questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to have any hypotheses because
Right.
your study is qualitative.
Yes.
So here, I think you already worked on this
Yes, sir.
and finished it pretty well. By the way, great job on that.
Okay.
Because, yeah, what I want to see is sort of what you did was a brief intro about intro about trustworthiness
Mm-hmm.
with citation,
Yes. Yes.
then shorter discussions of the four components,
Mm-hmm.
uh, defining them
Yeah.
with citation,
Yes,
and
sir.
then discussing how you achieved each one.
Mm-hmm.
And that is credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability,
Yes.
one at a time.
Yep.
And you've already done this, I think. And then
Yes, sir.
discussing how you achieved each one. That's it.
Yeah.
And then this section is done,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So you've done that.
Yeah.
And then I think you're starting on the rest of this.
Yeah.
Um, begin writing here. So here is like you're not going to provide much commentary, Will,
Okay.
in terms of like what you think the results. Like, and this proves. This proves. There's no commentary. There's
Right.
just um, within the interviews I identified, um, or with response to research question one. So something like that. Let me put some wording here. In response to research question, or you can start a paragraph that just says research question one asked, and just finish that,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Um, in response to RQ1, let's say three themes emerged.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you can say, just name the themes.
Right.
Um, so then, and I saw you've started clumping those quotes together.
Yes.
So you're going to discuss theme A and evidence from the interviews, in your case, that as to why you said this is a theme, right? Basically, because they said things like this, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I like bananas, whatever they
Mm.
say,
Right.
and whatever their quotes are. Example quote one,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. And you're going to use words like similarly,
Mm-hmm.
Um, participant, or you can just say like, let's say you're calling them C alphanumeric.
Right.
C2 suggested
Mm-hmm.
that fruit is good, whatever it is.
Right.
But try to use whole sentence quotes.
Okay.
Um, right? And so you're going to sort of weave in and out. That synthesis language is already starting to work here, and you're not using it for literature, you're using it to explain, well, my friend Bob, not my friend, but participant Bob said this,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was an example of this theme. And then, but then, obviously one wouldn't be enough. So
Right.
Sue said this thing, which was very similar, and then uh, Roberto said this other thing, which
Right.
was similar, and then Kathy said it a little bit differently, but still seemed to support the theme when she
Yes.
said this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're giving the evidence through the quotes. The quotes
Right.
are your data, and so you're explaining, I found a theme. Here's how I found it.
Got it.
That is the thick discussion that it asks for.
Okay.
Not thick.
The best stuff.
Okay, I got a little ahead of myself, but so you're going to start with, if you have any demographics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I did that too. Yeah.
Something like that. And then this part, discussing the themes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not how ranges work, but 5 to 25 pages. It could be
Right.
really long because you're presenting so many quotes, and especially if you insert a long quote,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to get lengthier. Um,
Dr. Gooding, I got a question right here.
yeah,
On those quotes and things like that, everything is still double spaced APA, right? And
right. Unless it's, I don't know. I haven't learned APA 7 yet. So
okay.
whatever they say with regard to a long quote,
Okay.
like long quotes are a certain number of words,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you can look on Purdue OWL.
Okay.
Um, so this is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So it wants it like this. It does want.
Yeah.
So we just changed to APA 7. It used to be
Okay.
different. So now it's still double spaced, but
Okay.
it's indented
Oh
on
wow.
every line.
Ooh. Okay.
So I'll paste this into your document.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I've already sent it to you, haven't I?
Yeah.
Can you make a note of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Will.
Just type in Purdue Al APA long quote.
Okay.
That's how I got to it.
Okay. Okay. I got it. So.
And it basically just says double space but indented.
Yes. Okay.
So, and then you're just going to present that evidence that you have from
Okay.
your paper, from your interviews, that explains, well, and you're able to use logic. Here's the logic I used, but you're not getting into here's what it all means. Because the
Gotcha.
results section is meant to be sort of stoic,
Okay.
right? Scientific. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to get into, like, here's what I think it means. This
Right.
is because people are unhealthy, or,
Right.
you're studying diet, right? So you don't say any, I think this is because this person,
Sure.
like any of that. No
Okay.
commentary outside of here's the evidence for the themes that I
Mhm.
identified,
Got it. Okay.
basically, right? And then basically the research questions, and then so you'd start with this is say research question one, and then you're going to do the same thing for research question two, right? And however many research questions you have, you're going to separate them into sections by research question.
Okay.
So if you have three research questions, you'd have another one
Mm-hmm.
with all of its evidence and the themes. It may have
Right.
some of the same themes. That's
Mm-hmm.
possible. But maybe research question one has two themes. Maybe research question two has five themes.
Mm-hmm.
And research question three has three themes. Who knows?
Right.
Um, I forget how many research questions you have.
Yep. I
And
have two.
okay, so just two of those for you,
Yes,
and
sir.
report all the results without. So this is just reiterating, without discussion, salient to the research question, hypothesis. Don't tell me about other things that came up in the conversation. Like
Right.
also Jimmy mentioned that he has a sister who lives near me. Well,
Right.
good for Jimmy, but don't put that in your dissertation, right?
I don't.
Um,
Yep.
Identify common themes or patterns. Use tables and or figures to report the results as appropriate. If you think it's like, man, people would understand this a whole lot better if I just like, sort of had a table that's sort of saying, here's
Mm-hmm.
theme one and here's the type of thing they said and theme, you know, if you can, if you think a visual will help a lot, then you can talk to me about it first if you want,
Sure.
or just go ahead and do it and then take the risk that I will say, oh, that's a horrible idea. Um,
Right.
but most likely, if you think it's a good idea and it's worth the trouble for you, then you can kind of go with your gut. It is a risk, but um, anyway, describe the steps taken. And this is really where we get into that thick data. Um, Describe the steps taken to analyze the data. So you might say, well, I used content analysis and I forget what type of coding um,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Like
said, direct,
focus coding.
right? So
Right.
I use these, but here's actually what I did. Here's how I got to these themes, is what you're doing. Include
Okay.
thick descriptions of the participants' experiences. That's where you're listing the quotes and not
Oh,
just like, well, this person mentioned food and this other person mentioned diet. And those are
yes.
not, that's not telling me how you got to a theme. You're
Right.
giving me one word sort of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Provide a
Mm-hmm.
comprehensive and coherent reconstruction of the information obtained. Now, the caveat here is only the information pertinent to your research questions.
Got it.
And then your study's not mixed methods,
No.
so we would take that out and then that out, right? And then for evaluation of findings, this is really what I meant to talk about, and I'm sorry I'm taking a lot of your time.
No.
Are you okay on time?
I'm good. I'm
Okay,
good.
all right. Um, so interpret the results in light of the existing research and theoretical or conceptual framework.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to say things like, um, you spell that out probably, but RQ1,
Mm-hmm.
I'm making something up.
Yeah. I got
Happiness while eating emerged. So, and then you're going to say things about that have to do with the previous, um, the theory, or And you name the theoretical framework.
Mm-hmm.
Which states that enjoyment of food, say something that's in the framework that sort of gave you a clue into, maybe after the fact, even looking back, you're like, oh, my findings match what this theory said.
Got it. Yeah.
Right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're going to go in, so talk about findings in relation to theory, and also talk about findings in relation to research. See your chapter 2. So you might say something like, I'm going to go back up here. Happiness while eating theme appeared to conflict with the findings of Robertson, I'm making that up, to
Right.
2018, who suggested that emotions played little role in eating behavior.
Mm-hmm.
However, most scholars, example given Goodin 2020, Smith 2021, have found that emotions are an important aspect
Mm-hmm.
of eating. Goodin suggested that the joy of eating was paramount, something like that. So you're weaving in how your findings either match or don't match with the stuff you talked about in chapter 2, the literature. And then you'll go on and discuss, in detail the themes and how they fit with what this theorist said and what this researcher said and how they kind of conflict with what this other researcher said. And so you're using a lot of that synthesis wording that you used in chapter 2. But to be clear, in chapter 4,
Mm-hmm.
this is a concise discussion because it says briefly.
Wow.
Briefly indicate the extent to which. So was it? So you may not go into every example.
Okay. Because I was gonna say, Doc, I done blown 30 pages. I'm listening, and I'm like, wow. Okay.
Right. But here's what happens: those 30
Okay.
pages,
Yeah.
they go down in chapter 5.
Ah. Okay.
So here you're asked to. Well, let me finish up with.
Yeah.
Again, basically you just summarize, and then you go to chapter 5. Begin with a brief review of the problem statement, purpose statement, methodology, design, just one sentence for each.
Right.
For the whole thing, about
Right.
3 to 5. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so list the headers, and then we get into the implications, which is sort of like building on top of an evaluation of the findings. This
Okay.
is sort of like a precursor or a foreshadowing of the implications.
Okay.
So now you're supposed to sort of, and the thing is, here what you're doing is you get to provide your logic. You're now the expert. You've collected data, analyzed the data, and now what do you think? What what does the about to be a doctor think? In this case, organize the discussion around the research questions again. So that's how you organize everything in sections by research question. And then discuss any factors that might have influenced the interpretation of the results. Like, example, this happened during the pandemic, so that might have made people hungrier. I don't know, just say however you think, you get to provide a little bit of, well, I think that people were inside more, they were cooking from home more, less ability to go out and about, so forth. To be tempted by maybe things that weren't on the diet list, things like that. Present the results in the context of the study by describing the extent to which they address the study problem and purpose and contribute to the existing lit and framework. So, maybe use right? So here's where you're going to go into more detail. And you're going to say, actually, the framework didn't talk about disgust being a factor in, as an emotion. Disgust being, an emotion that has to do with eating habits. And so therefore maybe the theory should be expanded to include a wider range of emotions, you might say. So this is when you get into the current study, the eating with restriction. Again, you're going to get into that same type of wording that we used up front in chapter 4. I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah.
So the theme of eating with restriction was aligned with the research of Danvers, who suggested, and then Seegers suggested that, and something about what they said. Seegers, I should have a year, right? Right, so here's how, and you're using that synthesis wording. What did it do that sort of added to the framework? Or sort of went against the framework or sort of stretched it, any of that. So hopefully that gives you an idea of sort of
Yeah.
what this is about.
Yeah.
This is a lot. This is pretty much the same thing. I, I combined sort of this criterion
Mm-hmm.
with this criterion.
Okay.
Are they consistent with the existing research and theory and provide potential explanations if they weren't? So, like, you know, it was surprising that there was a theme of whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
This could be due to, and then just provide your logic. Okay? That's an unexpected finding or result.
Mm-hmm.
Or if somebody said divergent means differing from the rest of the participants. So everyone agreed about X except for Karen. I'm using that because we're in the middle of chaotic times, and Karen's the name of somebody who might disagree. Everyone agreed about X except for Karen. Karen said whatever. Perhaps Karen, perhaps the reason for her alternate perception on the issue was due to, whatever. And you're just providing some logic.
Wow.
Then all you get into recommendations for practice. This is just going to sound a whole lot like finding from the study was X. Maybe it's a theme, something like that.
Right.
Based on X, it is recommended that people begin to think more conscientiously about enjoying their food.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then another finding based on why, you get the idea, right?
Yes.
You're going to use these same sorts of logic statements down here in future research.
Okay.
One finding from the study was X. Based on X, it is recommended that, and then you're going to say future researchers
Mm-hmm.
study L, M,
Yeah.
N, O, and P while including a more diverse sample.
Mm-hmm.
What are the suggestions based on your findings and based on your study that you've done? The study had an overrepresentation of black individuals, or that could easily be high SES individuals. Just anything about the study. Therefore, future research should include a more diverse sample with all social strata, something like that. Just explaining, like, I've got these ideas for future research for anybody that wants to follow my dissertation. Here's why. Here's what I found, or here's one of the implications. I think somebody should look into that. It suggested that emotions be considered and dietary practices. So, study that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, is what you're saying. Study that. And you're giving all these ideas, but it asks you to justify
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Yeah.
you are suggesting. And then discuss how future researchers can improve upon the study. Here, had several limitations.
Mm-hmm.
The first was P. Um, future research can avoid P by, whatever you suggest.
Right.
The second was Q. Future, and obviously you don't want to sound like a robot like this, but future research can mitigate the effects of Q by suggestion.
Yes.
And you just go through any limitations. I was hoping it would fix that for me.
Yeah.
Right, and then you're going to go, we're almost done, by the way.
Yeah.
Are you okay on time?
Oh yeah. I'm good, Doc.
I'm sorry about.
No, I'm good.
Explain what the next logical step is in this line of research. So, like, if you were going to do the next, you're going to use these words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, the next logical
Mm-hmm.
step is, like, what, if you were to choose one thing to do as your next study, what would it be?
Right.
Um, I just made that one up, obviously.
Gotcha. I got
And
it.
then here, I'm going to help you work on this when we get to it, but you're going to provide a strong, concise conclusion. Just summarize the study. Here was the problem, here was the purpose, here's what we found,
Yes.
here's why it was important. Present a take-home message. Everybody needs to be, and I know this isn't your study, but everybody needs to be more conscientious and more aware of their emotions when eating, whatever your study says. Obviously not what I just said, but a take-home message of, like, here's a really important thing that everybody should get from this study. Emphasize what the results of the study mean with respect to previous research. So you might even have this one as the last thing you say.
Okay.
And then here, talk about the findings of the study really did align with most of the research, and maybe provide a few examples. They diverged from other research, and then provide a few examples. In terms of theory, it expanded the theory by doing, by sort of studying a new type of dietary practice group, and then how it sort of, gave you ideas for theory, and then I would put that take-home message last, probably.
Yeah.
You might even do these in the opposite order that they're listed here, and then send it to me again. So any questions? I know we're way over on time. But I thought this would probably be worth it in the long run.
Yes.
Any questions while you have it in front of you?
No, because I haven't even.
You ready to process?
I'm ready.